Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Jason.
Hello, everyone.
And Stoney.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going good.
We're going good.
Yep.
Just kind of watching all this craziness that's happening.
In
Seems
the
like every
world.
time I pull up my phone, there's always a alert coming over, and
Yeah.
this is going on and that's going on, and it's all surrounding.
Yep.
The all the stuff going on with the economy and trade and
stock market,
stock
yeah, all that
market,
stuff. It's
and it's
everything.
just nonstop.
Yeah.
Well, this week, when the trade started taking effect, the stock market went up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it seemed like the stock market's pretty good right now. So I think that was as a result of the pause on the tariffs. It was a 90-day pause, and I think the economy, the wheelers. I mean, the wheeling and dealing,
The back and forth. of all
I think. The markets were such, ups and down. Nobody knew what was kind of going on, how all this was going to settle out. And I think with just the amount of uproar that's going on, I think that probably led to the pause. I think to allow, deals to be renegotiated.
But you see, that's the point right there. Deals to be renegotiated. Because here's the problem. Why is it okay for everybody else to charge America tariffs and America not charge anybody for tariffs? I don't understand that. In 1790, tariffs were about 20%. In 1825, they peaked at approximately 62%.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1860, they went back down to about 20%. And when you start looking at the numbers of how much tariffs are that are being charged to America today, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, America wants to go back to the tariff thing, and now everybody's in an uproar.
Mm.
Yeah, I think prior to the pause, the tariff rate was actually set to reach the highest in more than 100 years. Because in 1905, I'm looking at a chart right now from the BBC. It's showing just under 30%, which that would have been a very high period of time when tariffs were primarily used. Now, you have to go back at a time there was no income tax. That's how the U.S. government, I think, funded itself, was through tariffs.
Yeah.
Can I do something right quick? I took
Sure.
a little time today because a lot of people have some misconceptions about what tariffs are.
Before you get into that, I didn't realize we're going to be rocking and rolling right into the episode. In case anyone doesn't know from the title, we're talking about the tariff situation.
Okay.
Today.
All right.
Just want to say that right here at the beginning because I was like, we're getting into it head first.
Yeah, we kind of jumped
Well, it's
into
a big
it.
subject.
Yeah, you're right.
and
You're
it's-
right.
it's
I just want to at
everywhere.
least clear that out. The way that's where.
So what I did was kind of the top 10 things to know about tariffs.
Okay.
They're really simple. They're really basic. I broke it down to a really simplified to where anybody could kind of understand it. Number one, tariffs are trade tolls. When stuff comes into the U.S. from another country, we can charge a fee. Number two, America was built on tariffs. Before the income tax in 1913, tariffs paid the bills and the country thrived. Number three, after World War II, we lowered our own tariffs to help rebuild other nations. We opened our markets that generously helped generate global trade. Okay? Number four, we forgot to reset it. Other countries kept high tariffs, we stayed low, and the imbalance grew. Number five, what we're doing now is not a reset. We're not crushing the global economy. We're rebuilding our own foundation. So we're going back to how the country was started, and we're just being fair. If you're going to do this to us, we all want to be fair. Maybe we should do it to you too. Some countries, number 6, some countries charge 10 times more than us. Like, for instance, India's average is 50%. Ours is 4%. We're just asking for fair game. Number 7, this is not isolation. We are not trying to isolate America. This is basically an insurance. We still trade, but we want to protect jobs, supply chains, and economic independence. And then if you look at how many countries are now saying they're going to invest in America to kind of get around that, countries and companies, you kind of see that. Okay. Yes. Number 8, some prices may rise, but it's temporary. Think mangoes in winter. You still get them. They just may not be on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, businesses are already, like I just said, adapting. Companies are moving factories to the U.S., and others are already investing in U.S. infrastructure. That's jobs and that's growth. And number 10, this is not selfish of America. This is strategic. We gave the world a hand up. Now we're stabilizing our home so that we can thrive again.
Well,
that's just a real simple kind of, so everybody can kind of understand what we're doing and why we're doing it.
I mean, I think what's going on is, and this is a more fundamental question, is what's going on right now is the existing liberal international order that emerged out of World War II
Mm-hmm.
is being questioned. And I think this is where Stoney, you mentioned that we lowered our tariffs because we were trying to help rebuild Europe. Now,
well, we said Germany, hey, you can sell us these cars and we're not going to charge you a tariff.
But I mean, the world was devastated.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Sure.
I mean, this was America, the Marshall Plan, and all these things to try to rebuild Europe, try to get industry going again, and to try to kind of get things back to somewhat of a normal equilibrium, that existed before. I think fundamentally we have to ask ourselves, is the existing arrangements working still?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say they're not. These things only work if they benefit the host country. And we kind of talked on this idea, I believe, in another episode. I don't remember, but I remember this topic coming up. We have to find a way to bring industry back to America that keeps our national security in place. Mm-hmm. When you right now are getting all your defense equipment from China and you can't make it here,
yeah.
How can
let me ask you a question.
You could see how that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Question I'm going to throw right your way. What's Silicon Valley? What was Silicon Valley?
What do you mean, what was it?
What was it? We've all heard the term. What was Silicon Valley? That's the original place that computers and computer parts were built.
Right.
Until we decided to send that out to Taiwan and China.
Well,
how about we bring Silicon Valley back? How about we put that back in the American hands and put it back in the American workers' hands?
Yeah, and that's fine. And I agree with that totally to a degree. Mm-hmm. I look, at the end of the day, there are many countries that their entire economies are based upon them manufacturing stuff and we buy it. They're very poor countries, and this is how they claw their countries out of poverty.
Really? Because Canada charges 298% tariffs on butter, 270 on milk. Cheese is 245. Chicken is 238%. Sausage is 69.9%. Barley seeds is 57.8%. Copper's 48%. HVAC equipment is 45%, aluminum is 45%, TVs is 45%, vacuums is 35%, cable boxes is 35%, meat's 26%, cars is 25%, and steel is 25%. So how is what America doing going to hurt Canada when they're charging up to 5 times for some things that we would charge?
Well, but I would venture to say that there was a change in the 70s. When, unfortunately, really, I would venture to say, of course, Nixon opened up China to the West. And I would even go further to say that really what changed things was Bill Clinton granting China most favored nation status. And unfortunately, they have utilized that to steal, they undermine, they devalue their own currency. They manipulate a lot of their businesses are subsidized. And so we have been running major trade imbalances with China. I think a lot of companies found out that I can increase my profits if I offshore labor, because we all know that labor is your most expensive cost. And unfortunately, it is destroyed many segments of the U.S. economy. The manufacturing has just completely gone away. I think that has led to other issues that you get into, like family policy and education policy and everything that kind of flows from that. Communities were devastated. I believe that, drugs settle in, people get depressed. There's no job. At one time, somebody could get a job in a plant or a manufacturing facility and be able to raise a family on that.
Yeah.
That changed over time. Now, look, there's arguments back and forth. I mean, with organized labor and, just look at cars. For the longest time, what people were starting to buy Toyotas and stuff like that because their cars were more reliable. They lasted longer. What was the old saying? When they buy an American car, it's going to be broken in a couple of years. It's creaking. I think
felt the same way about Hondas.
It didn't always used to be that way.
No,
Made in America used to mean something. I have something that I wrote I want to say toward the end of the thing about that, because I have something very specific
that's what I'm
to
saying.
say about
But I'm saying something changed where it was more about.
Something changed is when we started.
Well, I'm saying that, but they started outsourcing that. But they started outsourcing that because what happened was labor costs started going up. So look, at the end of the day, these companies have investors.
Yeah.
And if you have money in a company and you're looking at your dividend statement and you're seeing you're losing money, well, then you're calling the board of directors and saying, what's going on? How do we make the company more profitable? So what do? You offshore labor. And so, okay, now we cut out, 40% or 30% of our, now we can turn that into profit. And now more money is going out to shareholders. And then those people are happy, but the victims are the working class. And that's the problem with that. So that's what I'm saying. There's got to be a way of kind of resetting things. So that's what I'm saying. I think this is a broader question. These arrangements that were made in post-World War II. That's what look, you're upsetting the apple cart right now.
You're upsetting the apple cart, but if you look at the long-term goal of this, is not necessarily to completely charge tariffs, but it's to open the market. Okay? European Union. They charge, these are our friends, right? European Union is our friends. They charge us 39% tariffs on everything that goes into the European Union. Vietnam is our friend, right? We saved South Vietnam to a certain extent. they charge us 90%. Taiwan, hey, you know, they charge us 64%. Japan is one of our great friends now, right? They charge us 46%. So how about America stop giving the handout and say, okay, if you don't want us to charge the same tariffs that you're going to charge us, you open your market up to us. Because you see, that was the deal with the Chinese that Nixon made. You open your market up, and we'll open up our market. They didn't do that. They did not honor their end of the agreement.
Right.
Okay. It's the same with Canada. Okay. NAFTA and all this other stuff. You open your market, we'll open up our market. No one wants to play fair because America's just, we've been this handout for decades and decades.
The American taxpayer has basically been, I hate to say, has been subsidizing a lot of these countries.
Okay. I mean, we basically give Canada over $220 billion a year. I think they can either become a state, secure their border, or we can quit being their ATM.
Well, unfortunately, we're the ATM for a lot of countries.
For a lot of countries, but they're supposed to be our friends, right?
Yeah, but it's at the end of the day, people look out for their own.
Did y'all see where Alberta, one of the, what is Alberta, Providence? Is that what they're called? Province. They have said that they would like to join the United States of America, and actually was it a governor or whatever? What's the leader of a province?
I don't remember. I know this prime minister is over Canada, and I think that there are like governors or something.
Probably provincial governors.
Yeah, whatever equivalent, whatever that title is, sent a list of things to the PM and said, you will do these things or we're going to approach America about joining them.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so think about that.
I think Trump is playing the long game.
He's playing the long game to rebuild America's foundation.
I just hope that the Republicans in Congress don't just fold up, and that's unfortunate what a lot of them do when they get just a little bit of pushback. Because look, you are, as I said, you're upsetting the apple cart. All the established ways of doing business are being called into question now. That causes a lot of confusion. That causes a lot of panic. People don't know what to do. Like, you know, right here, all these tariffs, these ones that went into effect on April 5th. Now, he paused that for 90 days. There was a lot of, you know, the stock market went kind of yo-yo for a little while. But that there is still a 10% tariff that's a baseline that's still there. And China went up to 125%. I mean, we're talking about, which I kind of like the idea of dropping everything for the European Union and boxing out China, because that's your enemy. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple, that's your enemy.
Well, have you heard recently the back and forth they had a couple days ago that ended up culminating?
China can't survive that because they require our market to be open to them, because if it doesn't,
they tank.
They tank. And look, now China has said we will fight to the end. Now
that end may come quick if they start fighting.
That last time what happened, all of a sudden we had a worldwide pandemic somehow managed to just mysteriously appear.
Yeah.
So I don't put anything past that the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, that was an agreement between China and the Biden crime family.
Yeah.
I mean, they needed to win, and that I just COVID helped them out.
I love the tweet. It says, this is from President Donald Trump, based on the lack of respect that China has shown the world's market, I hereby raise the tariff charge to China by the United States of America to 125%, effective immediately.
And you say 125% plus another 20% linked to drug.
I was going to do this. I was going to read the same thing.
Linked to the drug fentanyl.
At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. That's crazy.
We see what happens.
Yeah.
Now what's going to happen is, for the Chinese Communist Party to stay in power, they have to promise a lot of things to their people. And if all of a sudden they can't, I could see a lot of unrest. So I'm telling you.
Now you got 700 million people that are pissed off.
Well, because a big thing is that two companies, Shein and Temu,
Yeah.
are both two companies that I think are, if I'm not mistaken, Chinese based, that like sell very cheap Chinese products for almost literally nothing. They give it away, and I think a lot of that is because of the fact that they don't have that imports here are nothing, but not anymore. And it says it could raise package prices 30 to 90%.
Yeah, but see, you also have to think about what you just said. They're going to raise it 30 to 90%. Okay, and that's probably fair. But that tanker that left China a couple of months ago, there was a tanker with completely full of those big boxes,
shipping containers,
full of Temu stuff.
Yeah,
and the insurance company just had to write a check for $152 when the whole tanker sunk.
Yep,
that's a joke.
I know. Well, but I don't doubt it though. It feels very accurate. But I also think this is just a personal thing. I have never liked those services, because it just feels like such cheap stuff that just feels so...
It's all cheap.
It's
like
all disposable.
Anything at Dollar General.
Right.
That's all Chinese.
But it's all, but it just, for me, the fact that I'm hearing this, and it's like it could raise it by any package that's from like $25 to $50, or any package I think is less than $300, there's like a whole huge markup on it, could like significantly hinder that kind of stuff. I'm like, I kind of think that's
good.
You're
spending $3 anyway.
I kind of think it's good that stuff's not coming into the States anyways. I think that, I don't know. I think people are too infatuated with cheap disposable stuff. And
we have too much stuff now.
Yes. Right.
That's why the number one thing you see being built are storage buildings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we have too much crap.
And that's sad. Personally, when I see a huge, nice building being built up, I'm like, I wonder what it's going to be. And it's like, oh, it's storage units? I don't know, man. Yeah. I think this is now there may be other things outside of my scope of perception that I don't know about that are going to be hindering things in a different way. But some of this stuff, I'm like, hey, I kind of been wanting those things to go away anyways. Some of those services, like
like right now, I'm looking at this article. It said that there's a 46% on Vietnam, 44% on Sri Lanka, 20% on the European Union. Right now, exports to the U.S. are equivalent of 30% of Vietnam's entire economy.
Well, think about this. We send 85% of Canada's toilet paper to them.
Wow.
What you going to do? You going to start wiping your ass with the maple leaves now?
That might be what they have to do.
Oh, man.
And it's like, I saw this one little meme here. It's like, did you know that for years Canada has been charging these tariffs on American businesses? Eggs, 168, chickens, 285, cheese, 246%, butter, 300%. President Trump didn't start this trade war. He's just finishing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you don't want us to charge you tariffs, knock yours down and open your market up to American goods.
Right.
How hard is that?
Oh, apparently it's impossible.
It's really not that hard.
I think also in the tech space, something that's been recently interesting is that if you are even sort of in like the gaming console sphere, they're about to launch the Switch 2.
Yes.
And people are upset because I think that initially the price is set at $450, which is I think around $50 higher than the original Switch was back, in the however many years ago that was. And so people are kind of already a little bit upset about the price increase for that. But the problem now is that they're like pausing pre-orders because like they increased the price because there was already a tariff discrepancy between Japan and all that stuff. But now that things are kind of going a little bit crazier, they're stopping pre-orders on it because I think that they're concerned they may have to. This is not factual about raising the price on that even more, but I think that they're concerned that like to import those consoles to the U.S., they may not be able to make any money off of them. And so they're like, we may not be able to ship the Switch 2 to the States until some of this dies down because it won't be profitable for us. Or for
That's
Nintendo.
what I'm saying. When you can't, you can't make any of this stuff in your own country. This is what you.
And the same thing,
you're hamstrung.
And the same thing is happening for laptops. Is that right now any kind of new or newer laptop is kind of having a hold on it right now for the same reason as a lot of it's being manufactured out of the country and being imported in, imported in. And now that there's a lot of like big computer manufacturers that are like, hey, our newest laptop model that's coming out, like it may not happen anymore, or at least not for
now
a
I
little
saw
while.
that, speaking of the tech sector, I saw that Jensen had a meeting at Mar-a-Lago with Trump, and so there was some pause on some of those chips.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the chips, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor, is investing over $40 billion in a U.S. chip manufacturing plant in Arizona.
Good. We
Okay?
need to be able to make this stuff.
There's a huge Chinese solar and battery firms are quietly opening plants in the South to circumvent tariffs and stay.
Of course, yeah.
But they don't want to put that out there. But Hyundai and Kia have also expanded their EV and battery production in Georgia to avoid U.S. tariffs and qualify for subsidies.
They've also Hyundai's building a big steel facility here in Louisiana.
Okay.
Well, they said they're doing $40 billion, and we're going to get a $400 million just to build the plant, let alone the jobs and
I'm
everything.
not gonna lie, the newest line of Hyundais look really nice. So
I'm gonna tell you what, I drive it.
Yeah.
I've been driving a Hyundai for years now.
Okay.
I've enjoyed my Hyundai. My favorite car is that Hyundai Genesis GV80.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is an absolutely beautiful car. As a matter of fact, they are probably right now pushing the envelope on features and looks in cars right now as the South Koreans.
I'm also a sucker for a good logo design, and I will say the new, I think it's Kia logo also looks. And I think also Hyundai
they have a beautiful car.
Really cool.
They really do. It's been a good car.
The people I was talking about, it says HP, Dell, AA, and Lenovo have notified the supply chains to suspend shipments for 2 weeks. The hardest hit areas are concentrated in consumer electronics with some of this stuff that are all that.
Well, if people want to work, okay, if people want to work in America and get off of the McDonald's and actually go to work, one of the effects of companies coming into America and create, job creation and economic ripple effect, which is what's going to happen. Okay, we just talked about all these companies coming in here and expanding and building plants and doing this. So you got the construction jobs, including the plants. Then you have permanent manufacturing jobs. But then think about this too. Not only do you have those employees that work for the plants, you have support industry jobs too, suppliers, trucking, warehousing, maintenance people to go in there and do that. Then community growth, housing, retail, education in surrounding areas. The Economic Policy Institute has estimated that with each new manufacturing job, one person can support 1.4 to 4 additional jobs in a broader economy. So that's saying, if you create 1,000 jobs, you can create 1,400 to 4,000 additional jobs to support those 1,000 people working. That's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this country needs. So if you're going to want to work,
well,
you're going to be able to work.
I think, as I said, I the existing order is being completely renegotiated right now, and I think this goes back to what we had talked about countries not spending enough of their GDP on their own defense. What happened was, because they basically took advantage of these liberal policies as far as trade with the United States, all these tariffs, I think what happened was they started preaching entitlement programs in their countries, why they're able to offer universal health care to their citizens and all these things, because they're not having to spend what we have to spend on protecting them. So in a sense, I'm glad. I think it's past time in 2025. These countries' economies have been rebuilt. They can stand or fall on their own. And it's time that you need to put up for your own defense to a degree and to kind of get more involved in that. And so I think that, as long as they allow Trump to do this. And I do worry about the Senate. You got a couple in there that have been kind of, going crazy right now. You don't know who's been paid off and who's getting campaign money from who and on and on and on. We all know how it works. If they allow Trump to do this. Now, I did see the Senate and the Congress supposedly passed some bill to supposedly claw back some of the tariff power that's been kind of delegated to the President of the United States. How that works out, I don't know. I can imagine the phone calls that are being made right now with the business community because there's a lot of, that's what I'm saying. You've been operating under this model since basically 1945.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of inroads that have to be kind of undone. Mm-hmm. You got to kind of rewire the circuit, so to speak. And it's, that causes, there's a lot of people that are like, nobody likes change.
Right. Well, it's like everybody's bitching right now about, okay, Donald Trump's in power. How come eggs have only come down a little bit? Okay, the price of eggs has only come down a little bit. It's still coming down, but it takes time. The Biden crime family ordered more than 20 million egg-laying chickens in the last quarter of 2024 alone. That's not the ones the quarter before that, after that, and everything else. How long do you think it's going to take to grow them chickens again?
Well,
when you can go to Mexico and get them for 75 cents a dozen. Okay, but yet ours now are $12 a dozen,
well,
$8, $10, $12 a dozen.
That's the problem with nationalizing your agricultural instead of just simply
doing it locally.
Allow farmers to just grow what they want. Quit getting out of this business of doing all this. That's kind of some of the stuff that Robert F. Kennedy has talked about is kind of going back to a more of a farm-based model for our food.
And see, that's something else. With all of this going on right now, no other government entity should be able to own a square inch of American soil.
Yeah, to me, they're shipping off these poor animals. I've seen stories, they're shipping off these horses to these Asian companies where they're slaughtering them. I'm like, it's just horrible. Well,
people are going to have to slow down and be patient with the process. Because it's like with the egg thing. Why aren't the prices of egg? Well, you gotta have more chickens. Now we're having the plants. People are going to start building plants. Well, you know what? That takes time. You got planning and permits, zoning, environmental reviews, local incentives have to happen. It's going to take time for people to actually build this infrastructure. Then you got 12 to 14 months on average just to build something.
Right.
It's going to take time. Then you got to hire workers and train them. Supply chain rerouting. There's a whole lot of stuff. It's going to take a year to 2 years to kind of get this stuff rolling and get it where it needs to go.
Yeah, look, as I said, I truly believe, and I've listened to numerous news sites. I've listened to several podcasts regarding kind of this issue, and this is a big gamble. It really is.
It is.
This could either be
because I think
could either backfire on us, and it could be a disaster, or it could be the beginning of a new renaissance.
I've heard some of the arguments whenever this whole tariff discussion first got started is that like you, the consumer are going to pay the difference in the tariff.
Well, they just pass the cost down to you. That's what they mean by that.
Which I agree and I understand that. But I just recently was looking at some conversations that were being had that obviously there's a supply and demand issue of like it's obviously. I want this. Let's just say eggs, for instance. I'm not sure if that's adequate in this circumstance, but like, I want eggs, and I will pay for eggs. But at a certain point in time, where like the threshold of like the eggs get so expensive that I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And then the demand goes away, so you can only charge so much more before. I mean, there may be a difference in like things that are quote unquote necessary, but like to go back to the computer example, I think there's a company called Framework, I believe, and they were saying that like due to like the 30% increase of all the tariffs and stuff like that, we have offloaded 10% of that to the consumers now, And again, I don't think they're going to be able to offload any more of that before people are not going to buy it anymore.
Well, okay.
And that's
But
the whole thing, the back and forth.
You're
of
right.
like,
But how about this? How about that company
oh yeah,
put pressure on their government,
right,
and say, why don't you knock some of these tariffs down that you're charging America, so maybe they won't charge us this tariff?
Because they're protecting their own industries.
But that's right.
That's
But
exactly what
so
they're doing.
why is it? You know what? It's illegal in every frickin' country of the world to enter it illegally. Why does it have to be illegal to do it here in America? It's okay for every country in the world to charge America tariffs. Why is it bad when America decides to do it? What America is doing, what Donald Trump is trying to do, and hopefully our other politicians are going to finally start seeing what he's doing, is he's not trying to destroy it. He's trying to change behavior. Exactly like what Ian was talking about here. Yes, you're going to have to do that. Put pressure on your country to lower or remove the tariffs and open up the border for our goods and services.
That's what I'm saying. Either you have tariffs or you have zero tariffs.
Exactly.
And no, the problem is you got to be careful with that because there's still ways to make trading unfair, even with zero tariffs. Because if governments are subsidizing their industries and other countries are not being subsidized, that means they can offer their goods still cheaper, and you still have some of the problems. Like, for example, like Vietnam wanted to go to 0%. Trump said ain't good enough because what they're doing other things.
Well, here's the thing. They can lower their tariffs to zero and then just not open their market up.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Yeah. What the hell does that do? That does zero good if you're not going to.
Right.
It has to be all of the above.
That's what I'm saying. You have to have free trade, and what that means in the term free trade means goods go wherever. Every market is open 100%. Either people like your goods or they don't. They buy whatever they buy, and you just move on. But the fact is, those economies probably need to have those tariffs because of some of the entitlements they grant their citizens.
Right.
That's what.
Hello, Canada.
Exactly.
Hello, Canada. They wouldn't be offering all this free crap if they had to do their own defense,
right?
And didn't charge. Come on.
Yeah, there's other things going on here. So that's what I'm saying. So trade is either got to be free and open, or it's not.
But you see, that's what NAFTA was supposed to be. Canada and Mexico were supposed to open up their markets to free trade.
All that
America had to do their part, but Mexico and Canada did not. And then all of a sudden, they wanted to be able to hire illegals with no restrictions on their vehicles, their diesel trucks, to be able to go back and forth from Mexico to Canada, where they were going to have zero tariffs on each other, but not America. And then they were going to spill all their oil and diesel because of their crap trucks going back and forth to Canada and Mexico. And we put a stop to that and said no.
It's this is going to be interesting. Right now, I think the big issue is China. How are they going to respond to this? I do worry about what they're willing to do to stay in power, and believing the Chinese Communist Party will do whatever it has to do to stay in power.
But America needs to be able to do what we can to stay in power. And we need to start retraining our children and things like that. That's why I'm completely for them destroying the federal education system, go back to the states. And I want to go ahead. If y'all don't mind, I've used this statement a couple of times. Chip Foose said, the tragedy in America today is that we're teaching our children to buy things and not build things. Well, I was just kind of sitting down and I started writing something. Do y'all mind if I read this right quick? That's more than a quote. That's a wake-up call. Not just for parents, teachers, or politicians. It's for all of us. Because America was not built on consumption. It was built on creation. We are a country of welders, machinists, engineers, tinkerers, and dreamers. Kids grew up watching their parents build cars, bridges, furnitures, and futures. But over the past few decades, We've slowly replaced craft with convenience, tools with touch screens, and now how to buy it now. We've told generations to get a job, not build a good company. It's crazy to me. To make what's handed to them, not what's designed, was needed. While the economy became global and the shelves became full, something else became empty: our connection to what we make. So when we talk about tariffs and reshoring, it's not about dollars or trade balances. It's about reviving the builder's mindset. It's about telling a kid in Detroit, Des Moines, or Dallas, you don't have to just buy that. You can build it. You can invent that. You can own that. Because the real wealth of a nation is not how much it can buy. It's what it knows how to build. We can teach that again, and we should. Let this be the moment we connect with the hands, minds, and spirits that made America strong. Because if we don't, who will?
Mm-hmm.
We need to get back to building stuff and not buying crap.
Well,
Like y'all said earlier, we have enough crap.
Oh, yeah.
When's the last time somebody built something?
Mm-hmm.
as I'm saying, our debt is still has gone up. I mean, I think y'all probably saw in the news of the dumping of American Treasury bonds.
Mm-hmm.
That's whether China was behind that or not. But the problem is that the Chinese is the second biggest holder of U.S. government debt. If it chose to dump all that, it would be catastrophic.
Yeah.
I mean, your money would be almost worthless. Of course, it would basically destroy their economy too.
It would destroy theirs too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, for all intents and purposes, that would be the nuclear option in the economic world. Would basically say we're dumping all your debt, and now you're going to fold because you got nobody holding that up. So,
right.
This is a problem. That's what we're talking about. This $37 trillion in debt that this country's in right now.
Mm-hmm.
This has been driven by these kind of policies that no longer work for this country. These trade imbalances that exist with some of these countries is just not sustainable long term. And the only, we got the Federal Reserve, and that can help some. And I know right now there's a little bit of tension between Jerome Powell and Trump regarding this, because it doesn't look like the Federal Reserve is interested in kind of helping Trump with the tariff deal. I do know that the new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, I know he has been urging Trump to negotiate some trade deals with some of our former, our allies, because, we need the G7 on our side. I mean, we want to really box China. We need them not soaking up Chinese goods. We basically need them to say, we're not buying anything from China. And really put China in a bind.
Well, we needed to get rid of the Federal Reserve, number one, anyway.
Well, there's a lot of people that say that we should, but
well, if we go by the original Constitution, which is our document, we wouldn't have a Federal Reserve.
Well, there's a lot of people that would say that. There's arguments of why the Federal Reserve was created, and the good and the bad, and it is what it is. That's what we have right now. I mean, it's how do you basically fund the federal government? Okay, I mean, ultimately, I know Trump has talked about no income taxes, of basically going back to a time when there was no income taxes and tariffs basically funded the federal government. Now, of course, what the federal government did at that time was a lot less. Was a lot less involved in the day-to-day lives of its citizens. I've always said that we entered a new world, after the Civil War, the role of the federal government in the states, and then it changed again with the creation of the Federal Reserve and the imposition of the income tax. Now, people complain about it, but at the time, people voted for it.
Right.
I mean, they actually, I give them credit back then. They actually did it the way the original intended, the framers of the Constitution gave to amend the Constitution, not by courts, by just simply going through the amendment process. Get 2/3 of the states.
But it was temporary. Okay? It was to pay for the Civil War. How are we going to do this? How are we going to rebuild the South? What are we going to do? So we started a temporary tax. And then after World War II, it never went away. They said, ooh, look, free money.
Well, as I said, China and the U.S. are projected to account for about 43% of the global economy. And this is by the International Monetary Fund in 2025.
Well, you know what? Other countries are not. They're doing this to us too. Ireland is imposing 125% tariff on all imported goods from America until we take Rosie O'Donnell back.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
She's eating all their potatoes, apparently.
Well, you know, at least I give her credit. She's one of the few entertainers
That actually
left the country when Trump got elected. So, you know, I give her that. She's willing to at least abide by her, you know, her rhetoric. So, yeah, I mean, this is look, you know, Trump called it Liberation Day. I knew anytime you make these kind of changes, it's going to just, you throwing a wrench into the cog, and it's, you know, things are clanking and things are steaming, and people don't know what to do because we've operated under this model for so long, and to undo it, it's going to take a long time to undo it. I don't know if it can be done in the 4 years. And be honest with you, Trump's got till the midterms, because if the Democrats win the House, it all comes to an end. Yep. They're going to probably try to re-indict him again and impeach him, and then everything is going to come to a screeching halt. If we can hold the House, we have a chance to actually do some things. So 2026 is going to be interesting. It really is. And I know a lot of people are upset losing their jobs in the federal government.
But that's not even close.
Oh, it's
to
a
how
small
many
percentage.
Obama had fired 600 and something thousand, and Clinton fired what was it, 340,000 people? You know, and that's what's kind of so interesting about Doge. Donald Trump didn't invent it. Who invented Doge?
I don't know.
I thought that was under Clinton.
Obama.
I thought it backed up even before that. You went to Clinton.
Well, he
and
did
Al
something
Gore.
else. Clinton did something.
Was reinventing government. What was his?
That's what they said they were going to do. But Obama created the United States Digital Service, which was USDS in 2014. And all Trump did was rebrand that to Doge.
Yeah.
Because it basically legally untouchable because it was already a fully funded and operational program.
Wow.
All he did was rebrand it and use it for what it was specifically designed to do, just actually made it work.
Right.
And I just think you kind of need to watch what's happening.
Yeah.
Because if you watch and kind of look at things, you know, they had the Obama appointed judge ruled it illegal that the Secret Service planned to fire the DEI hired agents. Mm-hmm. So what Donald Trump did was have them all assigned to Clinton, Obama, and Biden, who rejected them and demanded merit-based male agents. What does that tell you? The hypocrisy of the liberal agenda is ridiculous. They're standing on this mound of bullshit, and people are finally waking up to it. And the media has not completely come on board yet, but they're kind of waking up too, because this 1% to 3% is just not going to be enough for them. Americans are tired. I've said this before on this show, that this is the first generation since George Washington that will not do better than their parents. You've discussed this, buying a house and starting a family. You're feeling this too.
Right.
We have to do something to make this country stronger again and save it.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have courage because I can
Yes.
tell you the working class people are 100% behind Trump because if you notice, even with all this market uncertainty,
Yep.
his poll numbers have gone up.
Yeah.
Which tells me that all the people that are bitching and hollering and this and that tells me that's not the working people that are that's the top dogs.
Yeah.
They're losing money. Okay? It ain't the worker at the bottom of the deal because that's what people are tired of is all the big cats are making all the money and we're not getting crap. We just aren't. And I think there's got to be a rebalancing of some of this stuff. And I'm hoping that people come to the table and let's negotiate some fair deals. Everybody wants free trade. Everybody wants goods to be able to cross the border. But I'm telling you, the United States has got to be able to be in a position to make its most critical things. If America has to go to war, and our number one enemy is China, who's making all this stuff, where does that put you?
Yeah.
It puts you in a bad spot.
Right.
We can't even make medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad that we can't do some of these things. So at a minimum, I've always said, I'm not saying that you need to make everything here. It'd be nice if you could. I don't think that's possible anymore in today's world unless there's another world war and economies get destroyed. Okay? The reality is I want us to be able to make what we need for our own national security where we don't need anybody else. If iPhones need to be made somewhere else, then they need to be made somewhere else. That's not critical. We can survive without an iPhone. You can't survive without steel, aluminum, medicine, computer chips that your own defense force needs to be able to operate its strategic missiles and planes and everything else because everything runs on chips now. So that is what I'm hoping to see, but I don't know. I'm kind of worried about China. Look, I've said all along I fully expect a war with China. It's coming. I really do. And whether it's now or later, it's going to come. I just think it's inevitable.
The resource war.
The resource war.
The resource war.
I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about that pre-show.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
About how the Fallout game.
A little bit foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing of our coming conflict with China.
An alternative, not so distant future.
Exactly. So I mean, but of course, I don't want war.
No.
The reality is, I mean, you've got to worry about Taiwan.
Yeah.
China. I've seen some of their ships that they're building right now to be able to launch an amphibious attack on Taiwan. Pay attention to what's going on in China right now because if its people starts rising up, they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to do something. And when people are desperate, people do kind of stupid things. They just do.
Oh, yeah.
You get desperate.
I'm experiencing some of that in my personal life. There's some stuff with work where there's some changing over of hands and changing over of power, and everyone experiences it in their own way, and they lash out in their own way, and they get upset about their own things, and everyone has their moment to feel stuff. And so it's the same thing with this as well, especially when it deals with people's livelihoods a lot of times, and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
People, all that stuff. So
yeah, I see Beijing talking about, Hollywood, one of my favorite things here in this country, but right now, Beijing restricts U.S. releases to 34 a year. I didn't realize that.
interesting.
That Hollywood has become less important in China as homegrown films increase in popularity.
That's the kind of stuff that they were discussing about with TikTok and all that stuff is trying to their algorithms there are more catered towards their country's pride and all that stuff, and that feels very adequate that they would do the same sort of thing, try and make their own Which, I mean, hey, every country I think should probably have their own media. And I'm not saying
Made
it
in
shouldn't,
China, made
but-
in America,
but yeah.
made in
Yeah.
made in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's where these tariffs hurt are, there's a lot of Louisiana farmers
Mm-hmm.
that import, export a lot of agricultural goods to overseas.
Yeah.
So they're feeling it. I mean, it's what I'm saying. This is kind of a deal where you're gonna, how much are you willing to sacrifice
Yeah.
to get this thing right again? And that to me is going to be the key.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
You're talking about that. But what about when they had the crawfish festival a while back, and all of a sudden they started realizing that over a third of the crawfish came from China?
Yeah, I say that I have a problem with that. And I know Louisiana passed a law
Yeah.
regarding that, since that's really a homegrown industry,
Yeah.
and basically you have to label. But they did an inspection and saw that some places were not following that law, which
Oh,
to me
man.
I would be.
Sketchy.
I always ask
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
if I'm at a restaurant, are these imported or are
Yeah.
they're caught here? It to me blows my mind that we're actually getting crawfish from China.
Yeah.
That's
This
absolutely
is Louisiana.
exactly. We got them running around
They're in the ditch outside right
everywhere
now.
else. I
Right.
mean, it's like
But that just goes to show how cheap it is.
well, that's what I'm saying.
You could pay
how
somebody
the
here.
tendrils have just kind of bored themselves
Yeah.
into the fabric of the U.S. economy. You've got something you wouldn't think that would be a no-brainer,
Yep.
but no.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, if I can get them cheaper from China, well,
Yep.
you know what?
Right. Especially if you want to keep the cost down for your consumers and at a reasonable price.
Yeah.
And you want to make money too. You want to make a lot of money actually as a owner of a restaurant. Not saying it's right. I'm just saying that it just goes to show how crazy the price discrepancy is between local stuff and just getting it shipped from China. So
We just need to be careful.
Right.
We need to be patient.
Yeah.
We need to help each other, and we need to trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
We were told to trust the vaccination process and all this other crap from COVID. We need to trust this process.
Well, I'm as I said, it's right now I haven't felt anything regarding tariffs.
Yeah.
I guess it really comes down to what you buy.
Right.
If you're not buying a whole lot of stuff, well, guess what?
Yeah,
You're
Tariffs
feeling-
not really going to affect you,
it's
is
not
it?
going to affect you at all. But for some people, I mean, it's a big deal. But I mean, it's it's how important is this?
Yeah.
Is getting the United States into an area for long-term
Growth.
sustainability and growth,
Yep.
or it's the temptation to take the easy way and keep the model that we're operating under,
Yeah.
which I think ultimately is going to lead to bad things
Mhm.
bad things for us. I just think that we can't sustain a.
Well, we've been
30
a nation of creators. We don't need to be a nation of buyers.
I just don't think we can handle a $37 trillion debt. I mean, it just keeps going up, and eventually your interest payment on the debt is going to be making up a
Yeah.
huge part of your GDP. I mean, something's wrong with that. I mean, it's just what I'm saying. This is out of balance. We've got to get some things back in a little bit better position.
Right.
And but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. This is of course the midterms will tell you a lot.
Mhm.
If the Democrats regain the House, then you can pretty much stop.
Oh, yeah.
If it's going to end for the most part,
Right.
and be pressure on them basically to do nothing. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of money from overseas being dumped into these races.
I think that like the market is also still kind of artificially overinflated from COVID and all that stuff too, which I think so. And even before that, so like I feel like the market is still. I feel like it's crazy to think about the fact that like we're still living in the wake of the COVID stuff from 5 years ago, but here we are, and I think this is a way to really shake that up and reset it, which is not comfortable and it's not going to make anyone happy, but I think it could.
No change is really comfortable if you think about it.
No, especially when it deals with people's
Livelihoods,
normality and their livelihoods and all that stuff and things that they're used to. People like incremental change a lot of times. Or I don't say they like it. They can't notice incremental change until like you look at data and you're like, oh my gosh, it's the market's overinflated or whatever. But it's changed like this. I think that needs to happen. And as I said 6 to 9 months ago when I was talking about Trump getting into office, I was like, he only has 4 years, and I don't blame him for like taking the first few months to like potentially his first year is going to be like really shaking things up, because I feel like he has to if he wants to do anything effective.
Yeah, he knows
in the next
he's
few
got
years. 4 years is going to come and go like that, and before you know it, like I don't think he's available for another term because he's already had
unless
one.
China attacks us, and then they can do that. What they do with Harry Truman, and they gave him a third term.
But if the next less than 4 years is all he's got, I mean, you got to start making some stuff happen quick. And so, and again, with that comes aggressive change that is not going to be comfortable and not going to be fun, but like you said, is a necessity, and we got to trust the process. So,
Wow.
who knows?
Ooh, man.
Oh, buddy. But not to say that's going to be easy.
No,
Well.
it's not. As I said, we'll wait and see what happens. But
Here we are.
it's going to be.
This is the reality.
How tough are we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all going to make it on the other side, and everyone's going to be okay. It's going to be uncomfortable, but buckle up.
Buckle up.
Well, for any of you out there who want to share your experiences or responses, we have many different ways you can do that. Many platforms have comment sections where you can leave us some comments. Be sure to like and subscribe on the platforms you can as well. We also have an email address, getoffendedtogether@gmail.com. Let me enunciate that better. We also have the website as
Retrospectpodcast.com.
Exactly. And with that being said, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Hey, we've seen what happens when we rely too much on other countries. Now, with smart strategy and long-term thinking, we have the chance to turn that tide. The past teaches us. The present tests us. But the future, that's ours to shape. Let's make it strong. Let's make it American. And let's make it last. You're the best. Peace.